Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us for Special Education Thursday today. Today we're going to be talking about early childhood, and I've got one of my favorite people in DC joining us, Monica Lesperance, and she, among many, many other hats that she wears, is the lead instructor for Include DC with the DC Special Education Cooperative. And she's a real expert in early childhood classrooms, and one of the things that we're going to be talking is understanding inclusion, because it's a term that's used a lot with students with disabilities or developmental delays and in the classroom. And I think for many of us, we may know the definition, but we don't always know what we're looking at. So just to welcome you officially, my name is Molly Whalen, and I'm the host of Special Education Thursdays. And we do this webcast on behalf of Advocates for Justice and Education, the federally designated District of Columbia. For those of you who may join in, please remember to mute your phones and not put us on hold, because otherwise we hear your hold music. And we are recording, so everybody else who comes on, except for our speaker, I'll put you on mute. And you can hear the recordings and our archive of our recordings on the AJE website. Just go to webinars and archived webinars, and you'll see all of the ones that we've done. And we've got about 15 on the website so far, so we're pretty excited. So let's I'm going to give you the slide. If you're having problems with your computer, you can call in and listen instead of watching. And then we're going to let Monica introduce herself. So Monica, could you tell the group and our universe a little bit about what has brought you to this field and what you do with Include DC and DC around special education?
Sure. Thank you for having me, and thanks for calling me one of your favorite people. You're one of my favorites as well in this work. So I'm happy to be here today. So my name is Monica. I work at the Special Ed Co-op, which is a small nonprofit that works with charter schools to help them develop quality special ed programs for all students. And my background is in early childhood special education, and I've worked as a special ed teacher and a program coordinator in DCPS and also in the charter schools. And so I came to the co-op, I guess, like 9 years ago to do a lot of things. And one of the programs that I manage here and that I've developed is called Include DC. And it's a professional development course that we created to help general ed teachers really understand their role and learn some strategies for creating inclusive classrooms. And the course that I teach is focused on early childhood, so creating inclusive early childhood classrooms.
So let's get into it, Monica. We were just talking about this as we were prepping our webcast. What does inclusion mean when we're talking about, classroom and special ed and students with disabilities?
Yeah, that is a great question, which takes me back to my early teaching days. I started teaching in 2001, and inclusion was not really a term that we used very commonly, at least not in the DC schools where I worked. And then there was a lot of misunderstanding around its meaning when people did use it. So as I continued in my career, we started to use this term more often, and I realized that we were all getting mixed messages about what inclusion is and what makes it work. So I guess a good definition, I kind of like to start with what it isn't. And I think it's important to note that inclusion isn't defined by the physical space that a student occupies, right? It's not just being in the general ed classroom, being present in the general ed classroom. It's a lot more than that. It's as you can see on the slide here, it's a mindset and an approach to instruction. It's really the way that you think about how a student is a part of a community, a classroom community, and how you're making sure that they are able to access everything that their typically developing peers can access, and that they're engaged with peers and doing age-appropriate activities. So go ahead.
Yeah, so I want to ask about that, because so often, you hear schools say, oh, well, we practice inclusion. That's the special education that we do with the students. But, when we're talking about, and I think you're going to get there, but when we talk about approaches, what's tangible, like what would that look like to a parent?
Yeah, and so first, one thought I want to say about about inclusion in this idea of space. Like you can have an inclusive classroom where a student might not spend their whole day in there. They might leave the classroom a few times to get some supports, but on the contrary, you can also have a classroom that a student spends their entire day in, and it's not inclusive because they're not getting what they need. So that's coming back to this mindset and approach. So getting more at kind of what it looks like. I think an inclusive classroom is really built on the belief that all students have the right to be in that classroom, and that the adults and the environment should be adapting to make sure that student can really be engaged and be a part of that room. So on the practical side, I go into a lot of classrooms, a lot of preschool classrooms in the Include course, and I observe teachers and students. And what I'm looking for is a climate where I see children of all ages and abilities playing together, where I see teachers reading books that have characters that have disabilities, characters of all kinds of abilities. Teachers are modeling, treating everyone with kindness and being really welcoming of different ways of doing things. So kind of the way that everyone interacts with each other. I'm really looking for all the teachers in the room to have a shared responsibility for all students. So meaning like if there's a special ed teacher in the classroom and a general ed teacher, they're not divide and conquer, right? They're working together with all students. Everybody in that classroom is a part of that teacher's responsibility.
Monica, can I interrupt you for a second?
Sure.
I'm starting, you're kind of fading in and out. So I just wanted to see if there was anything that you were doing, like sometimes when you were talking, maybe with your microphone or something.
Oh, I don't know. Let me see if is that a little bit better?
Well, yeah, I definitely.
Okay.
There. So we'll keep going. I just wanted to let you know.
Yeah, you were fading in and out a little bit earlier too, so I'm wondering if our connection
maybe it's our connections are not that great today.
Oh,
so
no.
we'll keep moving through. So tell me about again, like when you go into a classroom and you say, "Oh wow, they're really doing some great inclusion." What specifically do you see? Like, what are some examples?
So I see a physical space that is accessible for all students. Number one, right? I see a room where toys and materials are placed in a way that students don't have to ask for help to get them, that they can be independent and get around the room. Right. So that's one piece. I might see some special tools and materials, like a special seating for a student that maybe has a physical need that isn't able to sit on the carpet. So maybe there's a more structured seat for them to be in. Or
interesting. So even circle time, you might not see everybody sitting on the carpet. You might see a student that needs more support sitting in a chair or sitting in a support seat or something.
Absolutely, yeah. Or even on a special kind of a cushion. So so anything like that. I'm looking to see that the students, there's room for all students on the carpet. So, depending on what a student's need is, if they have a walker, or some braces or something, and aren't able to sit, like you said, crisscross on the carpet, that there's a way for them to still be in that circle, that they're still a part of that circle time and a part of that carpet time.
So I'm going to interrupt for a second because this triggered a memory. And for those of the people that listen to these webcasts, they know I share a lot about my kids and my own experience in DC schools. And I have 2 kids with autism, and I have a really clear memory of observing my daughter's kindergarten class. And they had rules written up for circle time, which, is definitely, I would think, appropriate. Mm-hmm. But it was things like calm bodies and being quiet and staying eyes on teacher. And I remember thinking, wow, those 3 things she can't do. That's not accessible to her. She can't keep your eye on the teacher because it's just something that she just, can't do it. So would you how would you say to the teacher to change it to make it accessible?
Yeah, well, I would say they don't have to change their expectations for the circle time, but they need to give supports and tools to the students so that they can meet those expectations, right? Because a student with autism might really have a hard time having a calm body, but there are things you can do to help them have a calm body, and to help them, participate to the extent that is going to work and is comfortable for them. So in that case, I might see a student that is sitting on a ball instead of sitting on the floor. Crisscross and quiet, right? Because that allows your body to move but you're still able to focus and listen. And again, eyes on teacher is a whole nother ball game. But really, I want, if the classroom is truly inclusive, then we want to understand where students are and their path to meet those expectations, and give them the supports and the tools to move them towards the expectations, right? Not 100% eyes on the teacher, but what can give that student to make sure that they're getting something out of circle time? Because those rules are focused. Yeah, right. The rules are about being participating. Like, those are rules that exist so that you can participate. So what do we need to do for a student to help them participate? So I would I was going to say, it's kind of that for parents and teachers working together, it's that, what's the goal of the lesson? What's the goal of the activity? And if I frequently, when my children were older and I had horrible handwriting issues, and I was like, well, if the assignment is to describe the art project or describe the English project, why can't they scribe that? Who cares if they don't handwrite it, if they can explain, the point. So if we really have parents saying to the teachers, let's focus on what the goal is for circle time, and then help my child get there with accommodation. Yeah, exactly. And I think you're right. That's a conversation that happens among everyone on a child's team, right? All of the specialists and the teacher and the parent, to really focus in on, what are we trying to accomplish here? What do we want for this child? And gotcha. Yeah. And then you talked, I was trying to move your slide ahead. You talked about a little bit about who is in the classroom beside the students. And I think that you've mentioned having, more than one adult. Can you talk about when I think it goes with your slide here too. Mm-hmm. And teachers that share responsibility for the students. Right, you cut out there for a second, but I'm going to guess your question is about who those adults are in the room and what their roles are in an inclusive classroom. Does that sound like where you were going? Okay. Yes, that's it. Thank you. Oh, okay. I'm. We're talking about preschool and early childhood classrooms here, so there's generally a couple of adults in the room anyway, because you have a room of 3 and 4-year-olds. Hopefully, it's not just one adult. So in a lot of inclusive classrooms, the model is that there's a general ed teacher, kind of a lead teacher, and then there might be a supporting teacher who's a special ed background, or is a specialist of some kind. And I really expect to see those teachers working together, because certainly in older grades, a lot of times the way inclusion used to sort of work is there's a general ed teacher who's like, I'm teaching the class, and then there's a special ed teacher who's plugging in to work with specific students. And I really see an inclusive classroom where that special ed teacher knows all the students by name, not just the students they're there to support. And then the general ed teacher doesn't see the special ed teacher coming in as a break from teaching all students, but they're truly a team, and they're really working together. And also that if there's a therapist, like an occupational therapist, who might come in to work on fine motor skills with a child, or support a child's sensory development, then that person's coming in and they're a part of the classroom too. They're maybe going to the block center and sitting with a child who's working on being able to stack blocks, but they're engaging other students in that play as well. So they're really embedding themselves in what's going to happen in the classroom anyway, and the regular routines and processes are they're a part of the room. They're not just a specialist popping in. Yeah, and I've always felt it really goes along with most of the time when you have a student with a disability that's young, like, well, if the teachers aren't working with all of the kids together, you're not kind of getting that same philosophy. So I think it does, what you say really makes a lot of sense. Yeah, they're modeling. You're modeling that we're all in this together. We're all part of the same classroom. Mm-hmm. So let me get to your slide. I think it's a good one that you might want to share with us about climate, environment, adaptations, and collaboration. You do such good visuals on your slide. Thank you. Yeah, this is something we share with our teachers when they take the Include DC course. We talk about what you're going to see. What are sort of our look-fors when we're talking about an inclusive preschool classroom? And I think I started to go down this path a little earlier. The first is the climate. I want to see all children playing and learning together. Again, this is kind of follows what we were just talking about, where the students see each other. We're all students in this classroom. No matter where we are in our path, we're all students together here. So we can all play with all the same toys. We can all do all the same activities. We do them in different ways, but we're all in it together. And really, classrooms that clearly respect and value differences. So this is getting at the adults and the modeling of acceptance and difference. And one thing that I like to see, it's kind of rare, but I do like to see it, and I think it's a really good sign, is when the classroom library has picture books that have characters with different abilities and different needs.
Yeah.
I love to see that in a classroom, because I think when you're reading a storybook and the main character is a character with autism, but it's just a part of who they are. You know, it's not the focus of the story necessarily. I think that's really helping children just understand and embrace everyone's ability and where they are and what their needs are. So that's a piece. And then also visuals that represent that. So, you know, we're in our early childhood classrooms, in our classrooms across DC, we're very mindful about having a lot of diversity in the visuals in the classroom. And I like to see ability diversity as well in you know, pictures and posters and puzzle pieces and dollhouse figurines, things like that. So that's sort of kind of setting that climate. Do you want me to just keep going through my thoughts here?
Adaptations. Oops, can you hear? Oh,
yeah.
Okay. I think we are still getting out. Sorry.
Yeah, that's right. So I did already talk about environment a little bit. I think, and so I'll jump ahead to this adaptations piece. This is what we were talked about circle time, right, and being able to participate.
Gotcha.
So there are a lot of adaptations that I want to see when I go into a classroom, and I really think in preschool, you know, we're talking about 3- and 4-year-olds, and everybody's in a different place in their development, and it can vary greatly. So it's really just finding ways for everyone to be able to participate. And for some students, that might be a special kind of paintbrush or a special spoon to help when they're eating their snack and their lunch, if they have difficulty using their hands or their arm muscles. I see a lot of times in classroom libraries paper clips or clothespins on books to help students turn pages, which they might struggle with. I want to see things like picture schedules, that visual schedule that shows a picture of a student sitting in the circle, so the whole class knows, now we're in circle time. And then the next step on the picture schedule might be the student playing in the painting in the art center. And so all the students know, the next thing we do after circle time is we all go to our paint center. And those are things that you see in a lot of preschool classrooms anyway. But I definitely want to see that in an inclusive classroom, because that visual grounding is really helpful for students of all ages, and certainly students with disabilities. And then I might see, depending on the students in the classroom, something like an iPad that they're using for communication. If it's a student that doesn't have oral communication skills yet, that's, you know, isn't speaking or is developing their communication skills. So I might see some cool tools, or assistive technology is one of the terms that we use. And I want to see all kinds of things, you know, all over the place for students that need them. Oh no, Molly, I think I might have lost you again. Okay, you still there?
Yeah, we're going to be, we're dealing with our adaptations.
Yes. I don't know. Did you hear all that? Did I cut out?
It seems like we're losing you for just 2 seconds, and then we're back in. So I don't know. We'll just kind of keep going. But I don't think, did you start talking about collaboration and the different people in the room?
I did not. And we did touch on that a little bit too a few minutes ago. But yeah, and in an inclusive classroom, all the adults are working together, and they're working with parents, right? Everybody, there's two-way communication. We are all communicating regularly. Everybody working with the student is on the same page, or trying to get on the same page at least. And seeing people coming in to embed their therapy activities in what the classroom's already doing.
So before we get to, kind of the next steps and everything, what do you wish, and I'm going to ask this 2 different ways. What do you wish that parents knew about inclusion in early childhood classrooms, or would advocate for early childhood classrooms?
Well, I from a policy perspective, there's a big push nationally for towards more inclusion in the Department of Education has released a statement. All of the major special education and early childhood advocacy organizations have released statements. There's evidence, there's a lot of research that says this is good for all students. This is good for students, no matter what their ability is right now, where they are developmentally. All students benefit from being in inclusive classrooms when they're young. So I'm seeing a movement towards that. I think the city is, DC in particular, is embracing this and excited about it. And I think teachers want this for their students, and parents want this for their students. But they need a little more support to get there. So I want parents to know that this is a good thing. This is there's a lot of research that supports it. This is the way to go, and also to keep in mind that it isn't just about that location, though. It's not just having a student be present in the room. There are a lot of things that have to be in place for it to be a quality inclusion classroom. So really being able to ask those questions of their school, like, you know, what kind of.
Yeah, and I was going to say your slide here, I think, would be great for parents to focus on, and to say, you can't just say, oh, my child's got to be in the classroom. I want you to tell me what you're doing in the climate and the environment and the adaptations and what teachers and people are part of it. And I think those are good questions for the parent to say, great, if you're doing inclusion, and we all know that's good, but you've got to do it with all the right pieces, right?
Yes. Yeah. And also on the flip, yes, push the school to ask these questions, and then also know that teachers do want this and that they need more support as well. And they might not know exactly what the right next step is, but engage in that conversation. Because I think, you know, by nature, early childhood professionals, we see all children as unique individuals on their own path, right? And so I think it's a natural, it makes sense, right? It's just, it's a natural fit. And I think teachers that are in this field believe that and want that. So I think they just need a little support to make sure they have the right tools.
I think also I think that we all, parents, we do inclusion at the preschool level and the early childhood level. We're going to have a hard time doing it for the rest of these students' lives. It seems like this should be the one that we can really, really do well.
Yeah. Yes, I agree 100%. And I don't want to say it's not that hard, because, you know, teaching is hard. It's a hard job no matter what. But there are some pretty
accessible. I mean, there's things to do. There's maps to follow. There's great programs like Include DC that, you know, trains the teachers specifically. So, okay, so I want to get to, especially since we're having some audio, we'll try to move this ahead. As everyone knows, we always do end Special Education Thursday with 3, no more than 4 resources or next steps. So it's one of my things that when I started this path as a parent and going through trainings, and you would have these large bibliographies at the end, and it was kind of overwhelming. So I always ask our guests to give us just 2 or 3 of the places that if a parent or a professional who's listening really wants to know more about inclusion in early childhood, where should they go? So why don't we, I put the parent one first, Monica.
Yes, good.
So can you tell us a little bit about that one?
Sure. A Parent Center Hub is one of my, as we talked about, Molly, one of my go-tos. It's just a great resource center. There's so much information there. And this particular link, it just talks directly about inclusion, what it is, what it isn't. So just a little deeper than what we talked about today. So I think that's a great place to start. If anyone is
just as a real quick aside, I will also say what's awesome about Parent Center Hub, it has a really strong search engine. So if you want to just throw in one word and go therapy ball or occupational therapy, you will get a whole bunch of articles. And I want to know more about that.
Yes. So that the next one is if you're feeling like you want to get a little more technical, and that is some of the history and policy around this movement towards early childhood inclusion. So that's the Early Childhood Technical Assistance Center. And actually, I think if you just go to the first part of that link and again, search for inclusion, these articles will come up. And I don't know if, oh, I think you cut out. Sorry, Molly.
Can you just talk about the last one?
Okay. So the last one is the Inclusive Schools Network, and that is the network of organizations that started and sponsor National Inclusive Schools Week, which is the first full week in December. And they have just some more articles and short blogs just about early childhood inclusion. So it is another, I think, pretty user-friendly place to go and learn a bit more.
Those are great. Thank you so much, Monica. Sorry for everybody for our little cutouts. We'll have to figure out. We had a similar problem last time at the co-op, so I think we'll figure that out. But I think we managed to get the most in, and Monica shared all of our good stuff. So I think there's a few good places for people to go to just kind of really focus in on the nugget of early childhood. So thank you very much, Monica. And I just want to tell everybody that the next time we'll get together for Special Ed Thursdays, we do it every other Thursday. So we'll see you in 2 weeks. And I think it's going to be a really good one. It's understanding ABA in the classroom and what are BCBAs. If you have any child with autism or working in people who are certified behavior analysis. And so we're going to be talking to Brittany Frey, who's been a BCBA for a long time, and kind of dive into and unpack a little bit about ABA and BCBA. So you can join us in 2 weeks at 12:30, or you can go online and have the recording. So thanks so much, Monica.
Thank you, Molly.